Alrighty, hello everyone. Today we are going to be discussing about the versus matchup of Gogeta versus Vegito. Now, uh, Death Battle is doing this matchup in particular for their season finale or whatever. So I figured it would be a good time to discuss about this. Uh, like figure out who would more than likely win more times out of not, because both of these fighters definitely do have a great chance of beating one another in a fight. However, we're just going to be going over which one is more statistically likely and their sets, abilities, and whatnot. Now, the first thing we do need to discuss is which Gogeta and which Vegito are we talking about. Now, that might sound like a bit of a stupid thing to say or question, because it's like, well, we're obviously just going to use the canon versions from Dragon Ball Super, right? Like, it's the most logical. However, it definitely does get a bit confusing, because, like, you could easily use Fusion Reborn Gogeta, I guess, as just like I guess like a bit of a stepping stone, I guess, to get into like super scaling for Gogeta, and it's like you could maybe bring up GT, but that's like an entirely different thing. So it's like if you just go on with just super, well, it's like Vegito takes place in the Goku Black arc and fights Merge Zamasu before the Tournament of Power, and Gogeta fights Broly after the Tournament of Power. So there's a big like power gap between that. So just to be fair, I'm just going to assume that for this matchup in particular, that we're going to be using uh a Vegito and Gogeta that are within the same arc. So it's like Gogeta from the Broly movie is fighting a Vegito that is fused by Broly movie Goku and Broly movie Vegeta. Just to be fair. Now, I guess now we can talk about what makes these two fusions different from one another, because there is actually quite a few differences. Now, for Gogeta, he is born by the Metamarines fusion dance technique, or just fusion dance, and in order for this to happen, two warriors have to have equal power level and do the dance correctly, and they will bring forth a fusion warrior. And this will last 30 minutes. As for Vegito, uh, or just the Patara itself, just two people need to wear the earrings, and there you go. They they fuse. If they're not a Supreme Kai, then it will last 1 hour. Otherwise, it is in fact permanent. However, I don't believe Fusion Timer is really going to be a point of discussion in this fight, because that does seem a little unfair and like boring, because it would just be like, oh well, my character just outlasts your character and they just get immediately disqualified because of timer. So that's a little stupid to assume. So we're just gonna ignore fusion timer just completely from this matchup. So we can easily rule that out as like a win con for either fusions. One has to beat the other. Now, there is some contention with fusion timer, anyways, with like Vegito possibly just decreasing the time limit, so the same might be for Gogeta, but we'll just ignore all that because I don't think it's that relevant to talk about. So so for Gogeta versus Vegito, it's very interesting because basically uh it's like, okay, so the fusion dance, both people need to be equal level in power, like exactly. Whereas for the Patara, you don't really have to do that. But it's like if Goku and Vegeta are equals, as like a lot of, as like most of the series has basically shown us, why would that matter? If they're both equal, then they're both being fused, and therefore gain the same power between both. Well, that's not necessarily the case. You can certainly argue Goku or Vegeta being a tad stronger than the other. But for this kind of matchup, we're going to have to delve just a bit deeper than that. And we're going to have to use guides and statements from the anime or manga to fully concretely get an answer for this. Now, when regarding to the Potara, the Elder Kai just outright states that the effect of the Potara earring is even greater than fusion, referring to the fusion dance. So he's saying that he thinks that the Potara are just superior to fusion, and that they birth even stronger warriors than the fusion dance, which is very interesting. Of course, you could just disregard Elder Kai, since not even a lot of guys even fully understand what the Potara truly are, as like Goasu only figured out, like only Goasu knew that the Potara only lasted an hour if the both warriors weren't Supreme Kais. So I guess you could make the argument that Elder Kai doesn't truly know what he is talking about. However, that just means we're going to have to delve even deeper with this. Now, there is a guidebook or a promotional material for the Broly movie, which basically says that Gogeta and Vegito are both equal trump cards. Now, this doesn't necessarily translate to they are equal power, more so like they're just equally useful in a weird way, if you want to say that. So we can easily disregard that as like a non-statement, really. However, there is another guidebook that it does talk about lesser forms of Gogeta and Vegito, but I think it's still pretty important to talk about. Is one guide says that Gogeta would beat Vegito if his fusion timer did not run out. However, this is a bit iffy, because the Vegito that is being talked about is from the Buu saga, whereas the Gogeta is from the Fusion Reborn saga, or the movie. So they're really comparing apples to oranges in this case. Where you could easily have like Gogeta could lose to Buu Saga Vegito and not contradict this guide at all. And besides, it's implying that if his fusion timer didn't run out, then he would win, which implies that he would at least need 30 minutes and 1 second to beat Vegito. So it's not like a stomp or anything. Like, it's still a really hard fight for Gogeta, even if you use that guidebook in the first place. Now, going off of fusion itself, it's both are talked about. Bleh, my apologies. Both fusion techniques, both the Potara and fusion dance, are both stated to be not just the two powers adding up, but significantly magnifying. However, there are numerous guides that just say it's fighter times fighter, so it's A times B. However, there's a very, very interesting guide statement that says that when talking about Vegito, is that the rivalry between Goku and Vegeta serves to further increase the strength of Vegito. So there's a rivalry boost with the Potara that's just never stated for the fusions, for the fusion dance, like at all, like and like any source of material for Dragon Ball. So you could easily say, using this evidence, that if it's like the same arc, Gogeta and Vegito, that Vegito would just still be stronger anyways, which is really insane to think about. However, you could say that, oh, well, it's just a guide or whatever. You know, it may also apply to to the fusion dance, but it is kind of weird. And I am unsure if Death Battle will even like go this far into it, but going off of specific character feats, Gogeta, if we use Fusion Reborn as well as Super, he's shown fighting against Janemba and Broly. Both just crazy dudes that don't really show a lot of like battle IQ, honestly. They just sort of throw their power around. Especially Broly. You might argue Janemba's a bit of a good fighter, but he's definitely not like the sharpest at all. Whereas Vegito was mentally dancing around Buhan, who had Gohan's smarts and Piccolo's intelligence as well, and he was making him look like a child in terms of like battle IQ. And he fought Merge Zamasu, which I don't think I have to say this, but I do personally believe that Merge Zamasu is just a smarter fighter than Broly, but not necessarily stronger, but just smarter. So you could easily say that Vegito, going off of showings, just has greater battle IQ feats than Gogeta, which is pretty insane to think about. Which is also very important to this discussion. If you want to bring in non-canon materials such as Super Dragon Ball Heroes, then I guess you could give both fusions Kaioken and Blue Evolution if you like really want to go there, but I don't think that truly matters in this discussion. Of course, there are still arguments to be made for Gogeta against Vegito, which is fair. You know, there are some guide statements, depending on your interpretation of them being equal trump cards and whatnot. I mean, it is very confusing and very contentious. Although I am very curious to see who people think, or who the majority of people think is going to win. Are more people on Gogeta's side, or are more people on Vegito's side? It's very interesting, and definitely gonna get some very heated debates for this matchup. Oh boy. But I believe I have talked about everything that should be relevant within this matchup entirely. So I do personally believe, if when taking like everything into consideration, like every pieces of evidence, scaling, and like feats, I think Vegito does show just a bit more impressiveness against Gogeta. So I mean, if you could easily argue Gogeta would just bully Vegito, I mean, this definitely isn't like a science, but I think just more likely than not, Vegito is the more likely outcome of this victory, which is just my opinion, though. I mean, you can have a lot of discussions, debates, and just other stuff about this, but going off of everything, I do personally believe that Vegito is going to be beating Gogeta. However, if you disagree, that's fine. So, yeah, I think that about wraps up this discussion video. Tell me your thoughts. Who do you think would win and why? And just who's your favorite fusion? Why not? I mean, do you think Gogeta wins, but you just like Vegito more or something? Well, all right, guys. Hope this gets your brain thinking about versus matchups in any way or anything. So I will see you guys later.